Okay. Afternoon, colleagues. And yes, I'm very sad that some of you could not join us. And yes, we will get there in the end. In future, I will disable all the other links, and then we can only have one link to meet. And we'll agree upon it in the chat box. Important for you to just download now also the drama, visual arts and music unpacking of the lessons, which is the national team has recorded a wonderful presentation or series of presentations where they explain every single week's lesson and they unpack the content and give some ideas as to the road forward. So we are going to start now with a recording that you missed. Microsoft Teams is a platform that actually requires licensing. So some of the features are not available, and that's why I'm also using the Zoom. But the challenge with Zoom, it is only allows 40 people. So we are going to start now with our presentation. And remember, I will also now load up onto the files as well as onto the WhatsApp groups, the documents that I'm referring to, as well as the exemplar common tasks. So important when you join in future, just make sure that you put your camera off, that you also mute yourself, and that you are sure that you ask a question in the chat box. There's usually an attendance register that you can complete as an indication. You can also see where the other participants are. So for this term, we have now also got a lot of work to cover. And I know some of you are new to the subject, and with this not being able to meet face to face, it is a challenge. But we are currently in our area experiencing extreme high cases of infection and a high number of deaths. In our office, we have 5 colleagues that have been tested positive, and I know some schools have closed. So please be careful and know that even if you have been allocated creative arts and you were not trained, this is why those lessons and the tutorials and the recorded sessions of unpacking the drama, grade 7, 8 and 9, and the visual arts and music is so important. The dance will also follow shortly. So the program that we're covering today is the amended program of assessment, which is very important. I know a lot of you already affected the changes, but we will just be going through that shortly. And this is now the addendum to that circular, which indicates, you can see there's no change in our number of art forms that we are having. We're still having 2 art forms. You are still going to assess the 12 formal tasks for the year. The only thing that changed was this mark allocation of 25 instead of 50. This is how the program of assessment then will be looking like. Let me just move myself up a bit. So you can see here that the 3 terms, just as last year, will now consist of 80% of your mark, and at the end of year 20%. Now, because of the reduction of the marks, you will see now the total number of marks have also been reduced here. So in essence, we also had to change the assessment guideline, and then you can also see that the practical has not changed, but the mark allocation is changed. The weighting is still the same, but the marks are 25 per task instead of 50 per task. So your rubric you will adapt, and your control test you will now also adapt to 25. So here with the test, remember what's important now is the Bloom's taxonomy. So you see that 8 marks out of your 25 will be your low order questions. This is your basic recall. So when you're going to say multiple questions or true and false, or fill in, match column A with column B, name the reasons for warming up, list the elements of art, identify this. Those are all low order questions, and you may not have more than 8 of the 25 marks of your control test. Then 10 of the marks must be middle order. This can be where they expand on the understanding of the arts or the complications of interpreting artwork, or applying, analyzing, comparing, demonstrating, understanding, complete the following of the passages, as well as now explain in their own words. Then the high order is 7 marks. So that's the area of the paper where they're going to create, give their own opinion, have to synthesize, come up with reasons of justifying, of motivation, and also to give critique and defend with reasons. So if you decide to have your out of 50, you can just convert back to 25 for the mark sheets, but it's easier. It's a test. It's not an exam, it's a test, because we are covering less work than an exam due to the limited time we have available in the rotational timetable. So very important also just to note that this is, I'm going to run through the program of assessment of each art form in each grade so that you can see what has changed, which is not much. There's been choices added to allow for where the materials maybe are not available, or for instance, where there's a group danger of standard operating procedures for COVID being broken. So you can see here that with dance and drama and music, there is the option of group or solo performances, which one can allow, as well as your face-to-face performance or your recorded performance. So note now for dance, nothing has changed. There's the option of social dance being added to all 3 grades. So you'll see that the PAT here is out of 25. So let's say they're doing the gumboots, and then you will assess it out of 25 rubric, and they're going to write the test out of 25, and together that makes your 50 marks. With grade 8, they can do pantula, they can do hip hop. Remember, social dances are very wide. Popular dances are also a combination of fusion of dances, and then the test is also there. And for grade 9, it's the same. Every grade will just now expect a deeper understanding and a more wide variety of skills-based set that they consist of. For drama, you remember grade 7 has always been this. There's been the 2 choices. So you either choose choral verse this term. If you do that, then you must do folktale in term 4. If you choose folktale this term, choral verse will be term 4. Now, if you have chosen differently than the lesson plans we have given, you can just go to term 4's lesson plans, which are also uploaded, and then have a look and exchange them to that. We will come to the adaptation of the lesson plan after this. So you'll see now for the PAT for drama in grade 8, we have the poems. So this praise poetry or indigenous poetry, that is the assignment. They're going to analyze the text, they're going to interpret it, apply vocal and physical skills to it, and perform it for marks. Then for grade 9, you have the prose, or the poem, or the monologue. So last year we posted many of those examples. Ilandi from Kalahari gave us also a wonderful set of lessons and tasks there, which I will reload after just amending the mark allocation and the date and so forth. So all of them have a control test that is added for the rest of the 50 marks. So you'll see here for music, there's been no change. They also are going to perform a popular song in a group or a solo, and the control test then will combine all the information and knowledge that they've accumulated since term 1. Visual Arts grade 7 is going to have a choice. So you have in the PAT, you have a choice. Either you can do a scraper board, which is still 2D, or the still life, which is still 2D. So scraper board does require more materials. So you will need your wax crayons, your black ink that you're going to paint over it. You're going to need your scratching tools. While with your still life, you can do a monochromatic still life using pencils or ink with pens. You can also use a color still life if you have those resources available. So that is your 25 marks, and then you will see that there is a choice also with the written component. You can either do the control test or the research task as the written. But in your other art form, you will still continue with your test in your timetable. So you can now see that there's also here, you can have the 15 marks broken up, with the 25 marks broken up into 15 for the role of the artist in society, and then 10 marks for the analysis of the drawings or the paintings that you have there. And that will be your research task then, where you have the role of the artist. Or you can have the whole 25 and write the test, just as your choice is based on your context at school. Grade 8 is 2D or 3D. So 3D does also require more material, and it can involve a group. So let's say we're doing the fashion item or accessory, and we're using recycled items or trash. We call that trash fashion, which is trashion. So you can make a handbag, you can make earrings, you can make a hat, you can make any accessories or clothing from recycled material, and that can be assessed now as your practical. I do know that my colleague in Michaelelo Intermediate, she already started with her hat presentation. I will also include that presentation just as a brief discussion, how you stimulate your learners when the conceptualization part of the introduction of the task happens. But you can also now do a still life or a societal issue drawing, where your issue in society will be poverty, violence against women, unequal rights. You can even use COVID as part of that, and then that will be a drawing or a poster that you're going to make for that, which is 2D. Grade 9, a choice between 3D and 2D. 3D is a maquette, which is actually a monument that stands on its own. It creates a shadow, it's got significance, it's an icon, it's got symbolism in. So if you do the maquette, that is a 3D item. You can use either paper mache or clay or armature or mobiles or construction of recycled items, but that does also require more time, also more resources. Then the other choice given there is where you can do the still life in 2D, or you can do a logo design, where you're going to look at your popular items like your techies or your school, and you can, or your, let's say your subject, you want to create a logo for your subject, which will include the imagery as well as the text and the font type. And then obviously all of them have a control test with that. Now, how to link the ATP to the lesson plan, to the classroom is very important. You can see here, this is the ATP for term 2. This link here will also take you to the lesson plans. I've tried to enlarge a little bit so you can see if you are going to do a rotational timetable, meaning group 1 will attend in week 1, then in week 2, group 1 is going to be at home, then group 2 will attend in week 1, which means you will take twice as long to complete your work than you would have normally done. That's why I want you to look at the combined lesson plans of term 1 and 2 and see what is it I need to do in class. What is it that I can give for the learner to do at home? Because the steps have been written out very clearly so that you determine and adapt according to your circumstance. Let's look at the flow of the lesson plan, and I've now just listed here. Let me just go back to drama, and you can see here, this is based on the poem. Okay, colleagues, sorry about that. It seems the mute channel was on. So yeah, I'm going to just start to say, remember that lesson progression is where you start with your analysis of your text. Then you add your vocal skills in lesson 2. Interpretation of where are your pause going to be? Where's your pitch going to go up, voice down, emphasis, where you're going to go slower, where you're going to faster, where you're going to go louder, or where you're going to go softer, so that the interpretation and the meaning of the poem is clear to the audience. The next lesson will then obviously be your physical one, where you're going to add your facial expressions, anger or sadness or questioning or pondering or happiness. That's where the interpretation becomes very crucial. And then in lesson 4, you'll combine the two. Also, lesson 5, we're going to look at how do we pronounce so that we make sure that our enunciation and enunciation is correct. The projection, the performance, finalization, and then we're going to also look at some techniques that can be used. And warm-ups are so important here, so that especially now with the cold coming in, and some of us have got voice issues with nasal congestion or having a cold or something hampering us, and breathing obviously. So when we get to the lesson plan, I'll explain also that it does lean heavily on the prior lesson. So the lessons are given in sequence and can't just be taken out of context. Then the lesson 6 will be where they rehearse, and then week 7 or lesson 7 they'll perform. Now, let's look at the lesson. This one is week 5 of term 2. You can see it's grade 9 and it's drama. So the pink part is where the teacher's instruction is. So here's the topics taken from CAPS and the concepts and the ATP, and here is how it's going to be taught. How many activities? Which of these activities are you going to do at home? Which are you going to do in class? Can you record some of these sessions and send them the recording? There are all of these options available. The blue part is where the parents can assist, and those are for the at-home, stay-at-home periods. And then the peach or the light orange is part of the learners' activities. So in the second part, you'll see it's now going to say activity 1 is about resonance. So try to work with a partner, remember social distancing. Now this is explaining step by step what the learner is going to do. It says, stand in the neutral position. Now, because you've done lesson 1, you've done week 1, the learner knows what the neutral position is. It knows about the intercostal breathing between the diaphragm and the lungs and the speech controls. And it's also going to now rely on the pre-knowledge that they have. So make sure that these lessons are in sequence. So even if you haven't done all of the lessons, make sure that you've covered well, so that you have your knowledge that you can include in the question paper. Because here you get some articulation exercise examples, which you can also include in your question paper, where they have to now write out or give tips on how to complete these exercises. Obviously, apply these onto your text, whether it's the prose or the monologue or the poem that has been chosen. You're going to decide on your setting, or it can also be the folktale, because you will decide on your folktale also and apply those vocal skills on the folktale text or the choral verse. The narrative technique is explained also here, and this can also be part of your notes that you photocopy and paste in the learner's classwork, because it explains the sequence of lessons for the term. Now, just to show you how the task sheet will adapt with it. You've now seen the lesson plan for drama for week 5, for instance, and now this is the formal task sheet for drama. So you can see now it's about poems, and here you can see it unpacks what is the learner going to need. You are welcome to make your own task sheets. Just make sure that they are also now meeting all the requirements that we are putting out in our moderation section. So here you see, I'm not only now just saying perform your poem, I'm giving it subtopics to guide and to give structure to the learner. Also, I'm listing what is it that the learner must know, and this will form part of the criteria in the rubric. So here's a clear and concise step-by-step instruction. So make sure that there's no room for error. You can see now the poem must be 12 lines long. If they're not using the poem you give them, then and they're choosing their own, this is the requirements that must be now taken into consideration. Also, you're going to say, when are they going to prepare, when the date. You're going to draw up a schedule. Let's say the individual performance, you can say, even if the learner is not there on that day, you can arrange to say, you're going to come and perform your poem 5 minutes, come to school, classroom, this, wear your mask, and they perform, and you assess, and they leave. Or they go to to join the class. So you can arrange your own schedule because it's individual based mostly. Then you will see here also that it says where to get your resources, but you are also going to now give them an example if they can't get hold of their own. Now there's a paper part of this PET. It's not just about the performing. You need to analyze the text. They need to write in their own words. So this is the part that can be marked forehand, that can be done in class time. And this you can, in your rubric, you include then also the written aspect of the analysis of poem, where they are going to now discuss. And you can say in period 1, we're going to do this homework, period 2, this, etc. You break it up according to your context, and then there's an answer sheet for them to answer. There's also a checklist to make sure that they do understand what they're going to be assessed upon. And then the rubric has been adapted 5 times. The maximum mark allocation is 5, and 5 criteria gives you 25. Which means that every learner, the preparation part will be part of the written component, where they are now going to write that. Now, let's say you get to, in your lesson plans, you get to week 5, and you see, I couldn't now maybe do the whole lesson plan component. You assess them on what you could cover. But the performance of the poem is very important, and it means that they lesson 1, 2, and 3 is actually the main crux of the performance part, where your vocal and your physical skills are added. The interpretation and the performance part can enhance their marks for the expanded opportunity and multiple opportunities. Then I'm going to just show you some of the inspiration for the fashion items of recycled material, the headgear. For females or those learners who are interested in, a lot of our hat makers are males. They just create hats for females as clients. But think of a lot of recycled materials like plastic bottles that can be cut and that can be bent and curled and pasted and folded. And then your theme can be there. You'll see there's a lot of inspiration of netting that is also available, of scraps of material. Now for the males or those that are sports inclined, is the makarapa. So you can also now have them create and design and make their own headgear for the soccer. It can be any event of social gathering that is, there can be a hunting hat or a traditional hat or a youth day hat. It depends on what you expand on the theme. Remember that there's also some instructions, like for instance, even here, and then there are suggestions into how the hat can be combined and compiled and constructed. And here you will see also the structure of the hat when they design. They can use existing hats and then decorate the hat. There's no problem with that. And then on paper, I know there's also a lot of shapes and sizes that can be worn. When we come with the rubric, you always need to have your rubric as part of your instruction of your PET. And important, make sure you select your criteria based on the instructions and the elements of art and skills needed. Think of your mark allocation. Must be 25. How am I going to get? Each criteria doesn't have to weigh the same. You can have some 3 marks, some 7 marks, but in the end it must be 25. If it's out of 50, convert it then to 25 before you record it. Only assess what you managed to complete. Let's say you couldn't complete the full task. Let's say the hat is not finished, but you can assess what was done. Then it means you will leave out that last part, maybe that says about the overall impression that was there. And the child can explain to you what you wanted to add, and still, if there's time during the exam, it's going to complete it for an adaptation of that. Now, coming to the second part of the PAT, of the formal assessment task, is the written component. Now, here is an example of Gauteng Ekurhuleni North District, the memo, which in some cases does not include the question, but I just want to show you in areas where you need to be aware that not all papers are adhering to all the requirements. So you need to just make sure. If you look at this paper, you'll see question 1 is 10 marks is low order. This is low order. Question 2 is also low order. So already we've got, and matching is now, and here, so it's almost 23 marks that are low order. So make sure that you just look at another way of asking the content so that your Bloom's taxonomy is applied. Look at your technical requirements. Remember your headings, your information that you need. You know, in the front cover, that it is that your numbering is consistent, your mark allocation is fine, and your memo actually indicates. For instance, if we're going to say, what is the definition, for instance, now for let's have a look at relaxation. Now the memo is saying 2 marks. Ne? So I need to identify 2 facts so that those 2 marks can be. What is the first fact? A state of being relaxed. Then you tick. Yes, that's fact number 1. The second fact is free of tension. Then there's the second tick. So also if they use other words, but it means the same as free of tension, stress-free or tension-free, or they can say that there's a total comfortability, or they use similar words. Just make sure that the crux of the fact is captured by the learner and that you mark accordingly. And this is the high order part of the question, and there you can see it's 20 marks instead of 15 marks because this is a 50-mark question, and that means the high order has been a little bit too exposed, and the middle order has been neglected, and the low order was also over-exaggerated. So make sure that your paper adheres to your Bloom's taxonomy. Include graphics in your paper so that you cater for the multiple intelligences. There are also examples of differentiation that you can apply. Remember, reading across the curriculum is so important. If a learner cannot comprehend or understand what they are reading, they will not be able to understand or answer any question paper in any of the subjects. So, how to attack a text that is unknown? Highlight key issues. Can you understand what they mean? Allow time for the learner to read individually before you just come up with the answer, so that they can make use of techniques that they have in themselves when they're alone, how to attack an unknown text. You also need to check whether your work is appropriate for the grade and the age level that is offered and the interests of the learners. Is there the pace matching the learner's ability, and then is your method of instruction then also friendly towards that? There are some useful websites that will provide you ideas with that. And then with that, I'm coming to the end of the presentation. I'm going to load up a lot of the lessons and the tasks. Make sure you select the task that suits you. Adapt the lesson plan to meet your school's circumstances and the work you want to do. In the visual arts grade 8 and 9 presentation and 7. The subject advisors of national explain how, when they talk to teachers, how that teacher changed and interacted with the lesson plan to adapt it. And that's why it's also given in the link as a Word document. And the Word document you can edit, while the PDF you can't edit. So thank you very much for this. And remember, we are in a serious state now, but the only way of escaping this is through the arts. The learners and we are all stressed, and only by expressing our emotions in music, dance, drama, and visual art can we actually relieve that stress in a healthy way. While some people are using other unhealthy mechanisms that create substance abuse and can be detrimental to your health. So remember that theater and arts are building blocks in the society, and a society that creates art does not destroy it. So keep safe, and thank you for your patience and all your efforts. It's been appreciated. So this is the end of the presentation, and I will be sending it through and posting it on the file section of the Microsoft Teams.